Hi, I'm Dawn Silva of the Rise of Funkenstein, Parliament Funkadelic, Sly and the Family Stone. Today I am with Musicians Review with Joe Kelley, one of my favorite DJs. And it's such a pleasure today to be on his show.
Welcome to Musicians Reveal. I'm extremely excited today because we have a legendary performer, singer, dancer, author, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, Brides of Funkenstein, Parlette, P-Funk. She does it all. She has done so much. We welcome, I think it's 21 years since we last spoke officially. That's crazy. Dawn Silva's in the house. How you doing, Dawn?
Hi, how you doing, Joe Kelley? Thank you for having me on your show today.
Yeah, you still up in Northern California?
I am. I'm still in Sacramento.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah, we're in we moved to Saratoga Springs, New York.
Okay, so you're not in, I think the last time we did an interview, you were in
Connecticut.
Connecticut. Yes.
Yeah, we moved up here 3 summers ago, so it's nice. So yeah,
Well, that's
I think
good.
P Funk
So,
played up here. Greg Boyer was telling me he broke his foot up here.
oh
Yeah,
no, I'm sorry
well,
to hear that.
long time back. Yeah,
Oh my God. Yeah. We got
yeah. So go
a lot
ahead.
of history here. A lot of history. A lot of history.
Yeah, you were speaking of. Well, first of all, I wanted to express my heartfelt, sympathy to you and the P Funk and Sly Stone family
Uh,
on Sly's recent passing, and thanks for spending time with us, but it's got to be awful tough for you going way back with Sly.
yeah, Sly, it's like I've lost my big brother, uh, as we go back, 50 years? And so since I was just a baby, I was very young in my early 20s. And so I wasn't just touring and recording with him, and he wasn't just my mentor. He was basically my best friend, and he actually saved my life on a few occasions. I mean, literally.
Hmm.
So for him, just to lose him, I'm numb. It's you can't even put it into words what it's like to lose someone like Sly Stone, and I know the entire world is in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And I've noticed over the last week since his passing, how social network is just showing so much love for him, and I just can't help but thinking and wishing that he was able to see that before he left here. And I
Right.
knew he was loved, but not so much as I didn't have a clue on how much the world loved him, and not just the black and R&B market, but all genres, all walks of life, all different types of people everywhere. They just loved him dearly. So that was a great loss, great loss.
And it's interesting, the musicians who weren't even affiliated with Sly at all, they have expressed exactly what you said, like this one hurts, this,
Yeah, well, he said
stuff.
he inspired just hundreds of thousands of people.
Mm.
Singers, vocalists, musicians, writers. You name it. He was so influential. I mean, the whole catalyst, the inventor, the pioneer, innovator, pioneer. Those words are just so tiny compared to how huge he was. How big he was and what he gave to us. And I wrote about it in my book where I said that Sly didn't change R&B and black music. Actually, he changed the look and the sound, and he changed modern music.
Hmm.
Period. He changed it, which totally changed the entire game. So I believe that his praises should be shouted out throughout the world, and I hope that he'll still get his flowers even with him being gone, because his music, of course, will outlive us all.
I always tell my wife, thank you's got to be in the playlist when I depart. That's one song that's got to be there.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
every cover band in the world knows "Thank You" or "Dance to the Music." I mean, you can't
Yeah.
go to it. You can't go see a local band without that being in their set list.
Right. Right.
So yeah, he's influenced and touched the hearts of hundreds of thousands of people. He did.
And speaking of the book, which is a voluminous book, how many? It's 523 pages or so, right?
It is.
Yeah. Funk Queen. We'll have the links where you could buy it directly from Dawn's site,
Okay.
dawnsilva.com. And we got a little picture of you in the back on our computer.
Aw,
But
okay.
yeah, so you mentioned Sly. We'll touch on a little bit about the beginnings in the studio with Sly. We talked previously that you were outside his rehearsal studio listener or something like that, but you got in the studio and asked to do vocals on Crossword Puzzle, right?
That's funny that you mentioned that song because I was going through some old a box of stuff from Sly, and I actually Sly gave me a snakeskin trench coat, right? And I mean, he was the type of person that would give you the shirt off his back.
Right.
He gave me a monkey coat, straight monkey coats. Somebody stole it at the show, but I still have that snakeskin trench coat that comes all the way to my ankle. I mean, it's really just soft. It still is from the day he gave it to me. And then I was running around and
Oh, wow.
going through my little boxes of little Sly stuff, stone stuff, and then I found my memorabilia's, and I found this gem. And so
Wow.
that you just mentioned that first, and so I really want to have that put it in a frame.
Right.
I do. That's one of
So
my
is it the
treasures.
same song on both sides or
It
instrumental?
is. Well,
Okay.
actually, it's two different mixes on both sides, right?
Okay.
And that's what this is epic. CBS did this,
Okay.
but Sly gave this to me years ago. This is a demo of it, right?
Hmm.
And I've had it not for sale, as it says on here. You don't even see these anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah. I
that
used to
amazing?
get those all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I know you did because you had your radio station,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
I belong to a DJ record pool and we get like 10 records. I have to give
yeah,
the reviews and everything. So,
yeah. That's a gem. I'm gonna hold on to that one.
right. Well, you definitely deserve it. I mean, that was your first official recording, right?
That was my first official recording. There was a friend of mine that lived in Sacramento. He was a percussionist,
Hmm.
and his name was Michael Samuels. And he was in a local band here that was actually pretty big, number one local band in Sacramento at that time. And I believe that Sly actually was looking at them, so because he had hired some of their band members to when he did his renovated Family Stone shows. And one of the musicians asked me that I want to go down to Sausalito and meet Sly. And I was like, because he was doing a new album and he needed background singers. So I was like, who wouldn't want to, meet the great Sly Stone? So we drove down to Sausalito. We went to the record plant, and I was sitting in the studio, and by chance, Sly's baby sister, Vieta Stewart, she was singing with Little Sister at the time, and there was the three girls around this microphone, and they were putting background vocals on another track that was called Hoboken, New Jersey.
Hmm.
They were singing on that song, and because I sang on two songs that day, not only crossword puzzles, but that one. And so Sly kept saying that he wanted some top notes on the backgrounds, and Vet said that she was hoarse.
Okay.
So Michael said out loud, "Well, Don can sing those top notes." So I'm looking at Michael like he's out of his mind because I was petrified. I was just in shock. I was numb. I couldn't believe where I was. And so Slide kind of looked at me and said, "Yeah, yeah. So what you waiting on?" I was like, "Me?" I was like, "Me?"
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, you." So I was like, "Okay." So I walked up to the microphone, and the tape started, and I sang my part like my life depended on it. And when that session was over, Sly walked up to me and said, "Welcome to Sly and the Family Stone."
Wow. What was your
Simple as
parents' reaction when you went home?
my mother wasn't too happy about it, because she didn't want her kids in the music industry. My mother dibbled and dabbled a little bit in the industry herself long years ago. She had a dream to sing and be in the music industry, and she found out how cutthroat it was.
Right.
So she just didn't want her children in that. So she was mixed emotions because I grew up with Sly Stone, and my parents loved their music as well, but she was afraid for me being out there, and rightly so. She should have been, because there's nothing that you can read, no blueprint, nothing to prepare you for that lifestyle. There isn't, and that's what she said. But I was young, and I was like, I was singing with my mentor, my most favorite group in the whole world. Are you kidding? There wasn't nothing that she could say to stop me from doing that. So yeah, I went ahead and went out, and I was actually going to a community college. I was going to City College at the time that Sly offered me to go out. So I just quit. I just dropped out of school and went out on the road.
It wasn't the tour was abrupted, right? It was supposed to be longer, and then
Well, we went out on a lot of tours, quite a few, and a lot of TV shows way before we got with P Funk. A couple of years of touring.
mhm.
We were doing all of the top TV stations, TV shows at that time. Like I can't remember Tony Lando and Dawn. What is it? Tom Jones special, the
Don Kirshner,
midnight.
did you did
Yeah, Don Kirshner's rock concert. We
right?
were doing just a numerous amount of shows, all of the top shows at that time. And Sly wasn't in the Chitlin circuit. He was basically on the top of the world, and he was doing most of the shows that black artists weren't doing at that time, except for maybe Ray Charles was on that level. I can't think of anyone else at that time. And we went out on a tour with Dr. John, I believe was in another one with Frank Zappa.
Wow.
Oh God, we went out on a Helen Reddy special. She had a short little tour there. Roy Orbison, those kind of shows. We were basically doing pop, right?
Yeah.
We're doing pop shows and very, very, on the other side of the spectrum. We weren't doing R&B shows at all.
Right.
So we did that maybe at least a couple of years, and then we were in the studio recording Sly's debut albums, the first and second the two albums that he did before we actually got with Proper Funkadelic.
I had one opportunity to see Sly in concert. I think it was the early 80s, and it was Bobby Womack, Jocelyn Brown. They did a concert in New Haven, Connecticut. I saw
Yeah.
Jocelyn and Bobby. We were waiting for Sly, and I just got impatient, and I left. And I'm trying to find out information if he even performed, because it was back during the days if he had performed or not.
Well, you mean the days when they were saying he wasn't showing up?
Yeah, I see. I didn't know. I didn't follow up on it, but it was with the Bobby Womack
There
tour.
were there. Yeah, I heard about that. I know that Bobby and Sly were really good friends,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that was before I got there.
Okay.
Shortly before I got there, he was doing a lot of that stuff with Bobby Womack, and I actually met Bobby a couple of times, up at Sly's, and met a lot of musicians and artists and stars up there. I'm still starstruck, and I was still like, tongue tied, and just, I couldn't believe where I was for at least a couple of years.
Who was maybe one or two stars that you met that you were so nervous, or you can remember to this day that these were the ones?
Well, Buddy Miles was one of them.
Oh,
Because I
okay.
know he had, my dad was a rocker. My dad liked the Zappas and Jimi Hendrix, and even though we listened to all the Motown and the whole R&B, the Temptations and the Stevie Wonders of that era, Dad was still playing Frank Zappa and songs like "Don't Eat the Yellow Snow" and "I
Right.
Am the Slime in Your Video,"
Right.
those kind of songs, and he loved Jimi Hendrix. And I pretty much knew about Jimmy before I got with Sly. So, but when I saw Buddy Miles sitting in the living room, I was like, And then I also saw like, God, some of the Tower Power guys used to hang up there, and Doris Day. Remember Doris
Oh yeah,
Day,
yeah,
the actress?
yeah.
I mean, she was my favorite actress when I was just a baby in a movie called Calamity Jane. So I mean, we're going all the way back. So,
Yeah.
God, I saw Billy Preston was up there. I think Ray Charles maybe was he at the house? He was at the studio. I met him when Sly was recording. There would be other artists in Studio A or Studio B, like they would say Zeppelin's over there in that studio, or what was the other guy that was Peter Frampton was in
Mhm.
another studio, another side, and then Sly became really close friends with Peter Frampton. They used to play. They used to have backgammon tournaments all the time, and
Oh,
I would go with Sly a lot of places. I would hang out with him.
right.
We were kind of joined at the hip there for a couple of years. Everywhere he went, I was right there with him. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a lot of memories, a lot of stars. I met, God, of course, Michael
Yeah, you
Jackson because
introduced Michael Jackson to Sly, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's the list is long, and I talked about it in depth in my book.
Right.
I did, and I just happen to have a copy here.
That's why you
It
go to
should have.
Gold's Gym to pick up books like that, right?
Well, this is the cover of it right
Yeah.
here. So It comes in it's so heavy.
Right.
This thing weighs like 7 pounds, 6 ounces or something like that. And then it has this little little sheet protector over it so
Mm.
you won't scratch it, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Ah, and so pull it out the box. So when I ship them off, because I mail these off myself, I have a staff of two,
Yeah.
and then they all come with a poster, right,
Oh yeah,
at
that's
the
a cool
back of the
poster.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're gonna get one of
Yep.
these. Yeah, so you get a poster
Yep.
too. Proud of this.
Cool. That
And
is
you see this?
nice.
You see
Rep-
that bracelet on there?
yeah. Yeah. All the world flags, right?
Yeah, those are the flags that, as a solo artist, all those bracelets represent when I dropped my all my Funky Friends album,
Right. Which we played on radio. Yeah.
the one that you helped to blow up.
Yeah.
And those are all of the places that I played as a solo artist because of all my Funky Friends.
Yeah. That's a great
So I had
record.
an
Yeah.
artist create the flags from all of the cities and countries that I played,
Hmm.
mostly countries rather. But yeah, this is the book. There she is.
Yeah.
And then on the back, of course, it's the same thing that's on the poster.
And
And
we.
then Sly Stone actually did a really nice quote for me on this book.
Hmm.
And he called this book an underground railroad to the funk.
Wow.
Now, that wasn't basically related to this book. I decided to use that quote because that's what Sly said one day
Hmm.
when he found out that Lynn Mabry and myself, one of his cousin, one of the other background singers,
Hmm.
we were sneaking off and doing sessions with George Clinton. So he said, "Yeah, y'all don't think I know about you going over there and hanging out on the underground. Y'all on the underground railroad to the funk." That was one of his quotes, and I was just proud to put it on the book. I was.
When's the last time you spoke or saw Sly?
Uh, October
Okay.
of 2019. Well, I talked to him. He sent messages from his daughter, Fun.
Right.
Fun would send me messages from Sly. Like the last message I got was from him was for Christmas. He wished me Merry Christmas.
Okay.
And then in October of 2019, he said that he needed to tell me something. There was something he needed to say to me. So myself and another one of Sly's proteges
Hmm.
that he taught her how to play guitar was Gail Modrow.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And Gail Modrow was actually out with Graham Central Station there for a while. And Gail Modrow was another singer that sang on a lot of the songs that we did on Sly's debut albums, right? So Gail and I jumped in the car and drove down to Los Angeles, and that was October of 2019. And that's the last time I was in his house.
Yeah. My
So
my buddy Swang Stewart sings with the Family Stone, the band. You know
yeah,
Swang, yeah. Yeah.
the current family now.
Yeah, yeah, he's a good friend, yeah.
Nice,
So
nice.
I'm sure they'll carry as long as they can the music down the road, yeah.
I think it's gonna outlive us all.
Yeah. Just like the
Yeah.
P-Funk legacy. But you know what's really key? You have put together and you got great news. I don't know if you wanted to share about the book. I mean, people are just loving the book and some higher up kind of things that got to be gratifying. Did you want to talk some things that have happened lately with?
Well, yeah, that book has surpassed my wildest imaginations. Um, I started writing that book when I was like in the third grade,
Hmm.
and my mother was all things history. My mother and my father both. They used to share. Let me start from the beginning. We didn't have a TV set when we were growing up. We couldn't afford one. So pretty much all we had was my mother's bedtime stories, and she would pass down the our culture, our lineage from her grandfather, who was a 100% indigenous. Her grandfather was called Red Stick,
Okay.
and his family escaped the 1830 Indian Removal Act. They escaped by living in the hills in the Rocky Mountains along the North Carolina Tennessee border. They lived in caves.
Mm.
And so one day, her grandfather, Red Stick, came home to the cave. He was 12 years old, only to discover that his entire family had been brutally murdered. Now, those are bedtime stories.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so my mother used to tell these, and there was so many of them, and I just kind of started, writing them down and just remembering them, and I was so mesmerized by my mother's and my father's childhood memories, and that I start writing them down. In fact, the my great great grandfather. That's how I start the first page of my book. I talk about how the indigenous survived this, through the whole Trail of Tears and the whole 9 yards. That's what I talk about on the first page of my book. So that's one of the reasons why I believe that all of these universities, colleges, and libraries, and scholars, and journalists, and fans alike, they fall in love with the book because it's similar to their lifestyle of them growing up. Especially if you're a black growing up in America.
Right.
By the time you're 4 years old, you're an expert on racism. So it just becomes part of your life. You don't really understand it. You just have to deal with it. So I just started writing it all down. And then when I went to some of the publishing companies, they didn't want me to talk about the racism. They didn't want me to talk
Oh, really?
about.
They told you?
No, they didn't think it was necessary because this book is called The Funk
Yeah,
Queen. So
yeah.
they didn't understand the correlation between indigenous be wiping off the Native Americans off the face of this earth,
Right.
in relations to the Funk Queen. But I was saying it's all connected. That's where I come from.
Right.
And I also talked about my great grandfather on my father's side, my paternal grandfather, great grandfather, who came from Germany, migrated and went to New Orleans in the mid 1800s, and he had 200 slaves, and he had 62 children with those 200 slaves. That's my father's side.
Right.
So I talk about in Louisiana. I go back to the Acadian French in the 15th century in that book, where you talk about the Acadian French refused to bend the knee to the queen. So, just like what's happening in now, she sent them out of there. She had them, imported, sent them out. 10,000 Acadians were deported from London because they refused to bend the knee to the queen. And they went to Nova Scotia and Quebec.
That's where my wife's from,
And in,
Quebec.
okay,
Yeah.
and in 1755, these Acadian French
Right.
went to New Orleans, Louisiana, and that's on my father's side. I wrote about all of that in my book, in the first 10 chapters. So these publishing companies didn't think it was relevant, and I go into much detail. I'm going to a great detail in terms of the history, and I did the research on it based on the stories that my parents shared with me, and then I felt bad because I wish that both my parents are gone now. So as I was doing the research, this was during COVID because I didn't have anything to do for those 3 4 years, and I started putting that book together, and I started doing the research on the stories that my parents shared with me, and I wish they were here because I had so many questions for them.
Yeah.
But anyway, fast forward up to I even wrote about when I said that Sly Stone literally saved my life.
Hmm.
I was a Black Panther,
Right.
and I was actually involved with Huey Newton, the real Black Panthers.
Right.
Okay, and how Sly had to save my life from them. It got caught. It turned into a situation that was dangerous for me. And if it wasn't for Sly, I don't know if I would have made it. And then what's so
Yeah.
amazing about it, because I have Sly's book too.
Hmm.
Sly talked about it in his book as well. Sly said a whole lot of things in his book that I said in my own book. So it let me know that the bond that we had,
Hmm.
because that Sly's book dropped what, last year? Yeah, I think last year or year before. It just let me know that in his spirit, that the spirit that we had between each other, that bond we had each other, never left. Because I shared a great deal about my love and my respect, and how Sly changed my life. And in retrospect, I believe I did the same for him as well. So that's really special.
So, any
So anyway,
when you're putting the book together, any hesitation, or did you get any pushback since it's been published from anybody in your circle of friends and associates?
of
Yeah.
course, when you have a truckload of love coming at you, hate's going to be right behind it.
Yeah.
Or just a lot of envy, but there was a lot more love than there was hate. There was some opposition
Hmm.
where people didn't didn't remember the way that I remember things, and maybe they basically claim that it didn't happen that way. It's not that I have such a great memory. I just I write everything down. The street signs, the weather, the time of the year, the time of the day. If I was hungry or depressed or whatever I was feeling at the moment, I wrote everything down. I documented it. So, and
Yeah.
researched the documentation that I even wrote. If I was in Memphis, Tennessee, doing a concert, and there was a mosquito epidemic during that time in the 80s, I wrote that down. The
Yeah.
date, the time, the place, and where I was when we had to be in these netted tents during an outside concert because the mosquitoes were so bad. I mean, they had an epidemic in Memphis, Tennessee. I wrote about that in my book as well.
And
But
and
some people basically have different recollections or different memories, and they're saying it didn't happen, or it did happen, or it didn't happen that way. But people are like fingerprints and footprints.
mhm.
Everyone is different. They're going to see it a different way. They're going to see it as a different color, or different time, or definitely going to have their opinions or that are going to be different from yours or mine.
And they
So
have the option to do the same. They can write their own story if they want
they
to.
can write their own book, and I always believe that if you give someone else the pen to write your story, they're going to write it the way that they have been taught to learn it, or someone may have told them,
Mhm.
or they may have actually experienced it for themselves. But they're not going to write it the same way you would write it. And I'm writing it from firsthand, and anybody who writes it from secondhand, that's exactly what it is, secondhand.
Yeah. So
So
it's the book, incredible pictures, and tell us putting all those. I think that's a big draw as well as your words to the pictures in the book. Probably why it's such a big tome. Where did you get a lot of the photos?
that's a whole nother story on its own. There was a fan and an ex Baltimore police officer that was a photographer. I got him in the book here. Stephen LaBelle was his name, right?
Okay.
Steve LaBelle. And Stephen LaBelle followed the Funkadelic tour at the time when the Brides of Funkenstein were performing, and Parlette and Fred Wesley and Maceo and the whole, I think I call them second and third generation Parliament Funkadelic at that time. That's a picture of him at the back of my book.
Oh, okay. Oh, he was a
Yeah.
diehard.
He was a diehard, and he sent me this picture as well,
Wow.
right? He went out for, 3 or 4 years, just, traveling on the bus and taking pictures and pictures and pictures. He had about, thousands of them. And then he started getting sick, and I think in the year 2019, or right before COVID,
Mhm.
he, maybe 2019, 2018, 2019, around that time, he said, called me up and said, "Are you still writing your book?" And I said, "Yeah." So he said, "I have all these pictures that I've taken over the years," and he'd been sitting on them for years, and didn't do anything with them. He would sprinkle a couple of them. A lot of the pictures that are out there on the social networks, so those were his pictures, but they're uncredited. No one ever gave him the credit because they didn't know they were his.
Okay.
So he asked me, if he gave me the pictures, would I promise him that I would put them in my book? And so I did.
Wow.
And he, unfortunately, sad to say that he passed
Mhm.
away. And that last page in my book is actually him, because I dedicated those pictures to him, because those pictures tell the same story that I was telling. And without those pictures, I don't believe that the book would be magical. But he's made it even more you know it's a memorial to these groups because of those pictures, and the pictures help to create the magic of the story.
Because
So
yeah,
I
such a
uh,
visual music movement. P Funk and Sly. I mean, that's a good portion of the package.
yeah, and I think the greatest treasure is that you have people who have bachelor's and master's
Mhm.
degrees, who have done reviews, and I sold well over coming up to 2,000 books now, and out of 2,000 books, I have over 1,000 selfies and photos that the people have sent to me with that
Oh,
book.
I saw a
I have a
doctor
whole,
was in his coat, his lab coat, right?
yeah, yeah,
That was cool.
a cardiologist who was a Sly Stone P-Funk fan,
Right.
right?
Wow.
He actually bought the book and sent the picture to me. And he wasn't the first doctor; it's several.
Okay.
But then you got Cornel West, who was running for president at the time.
Right.
You know, he took a picture and then did a review. And so I was getting so many of them. I came up with a funk page, like funk fan club page on my website, where I have literally maybe 500 or 600 pictures with selfies with people holding the book.
Yeah.
And I kind of got behind because I have quite a few that I haven't had a chance to even put on the website yet. I was getting hundreds and hundreds of them, literally little over 1,000.
You're gonna have to hire another
So
person to keep up with all
yeah, and
this.
then the greatest, there was this lady. Uh, she was an educator, still an educator and a journalist, and she used to write for the Scene magazine out of Cleveland,
Okay.
Ohio. And her name was Charlotte Morgan. Now, Charlotte Morgan used to follow the P-Funk tour, and the newspaper she was writing for used to send her out to do reviews. You remember back in the days how the newspapers used to send out their
Yeah.
journalists to do a review of the concerts, and they'd put it in their entertainment section in the
Yeah.
newspapers. This is one story about a lady named Charlotte that followed the tour for a short time and took a lot of pictures of the brides and did a lot of writing up on us because we weren't getting that much exposure around that time as much as we should. But Charlotte Morgan basically put the Brides of Funkenstein on the map in Cleveland, Ohio. So you fast forward to a couple of years ago, a little over a year and a half ago, she took that book and took it over to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archives, the library, and they put it into the library. So if you go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you're going to see the Funk Queen in there. So it also came under the attention of a lady named Stacy Brisker, who has put that Funk Queen in about if there's a library in
Hmm.
Ohio, that book is in there, especially in Cleveland. So it came under the attention of a professor that teaches, I think, Black history or music at Stanford University. He got the book and he read it all the way through, and then he sent me this personal message, basically saying that in the spring of 2026, he's going to do a full eight week course with his students on the Funk Queen using that book
Wow.
as a reference. And perhaps I'll be going there too as a special guest lecturer at Stanford University.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's
when
got to
he put
happen. They
that,
got to definitely have you there, at least. Yeah.
yeah, so when he put that on his social networks page, I believe it's X, he put it on there, and he got a few thousand people that came over and saw it. And so a lady over at
Hmm.
Spelman decided to put that book, Spelman
Yep.
University, put that in her library, and then it went on to be into the Wasserman and Sankofa and so many different universities, including the UC colleges here in California. And then the next thing I know, over 37 HBCUs have requested to put that book in their libraries. So what might be happening with me is that I might be going out on a book lecture
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
on the
That would
funk
be that would
on
be great.
under the title The Funk
Yeah.
Queen.
I mean, you got to do that. I
So
mean, with
yeah,
that much support from higher education, they have those concert
there
lecture
I mean
series.
37
Yeah.
HBCUs.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm over the
Yeah.
moon on that
So
one. So
don't
I
make a
am.
lot of plans for 2026 other than talking about the Funk Queen, right?
Well, I'm trying to coordinate. Still the Brides of Funkenstein are still. I still have the Brides of Funkenstein
Right.
together, and yeah, it's been a challenge to try to get on a tours or get any traction going so we can get some consistency with us doing shows because there definitely is a market for the
Right.
group. But probably gonna put the two together, the lectures and the shows. Yeah, because they're all
You know, I
connected.
was talking
It's
to, I
connected.
had him on the show a couple weeks ago. We're airing it this Friday. Said some really nice things about you, Gary Hudgens. Yeah.
Ah, Gary Hudgens.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
loves you.
It's
He's saying he told me. I mean, it's in the interview, but he said I was pushing him. I said in a selfish way, I'd love you and Dawn to record something. He goes, "Yeah, tell him all the P Funk and Dawn. I'm a better keyboard player than I used to be when they knew me." He's a nice
aw, he
guy.
was phenomenal then. If he's better
Yeah,
now, then he's got to be just phenomenal because he was exceptional back then. He was a way ahead of himself, ahead of his
yeah,
time.
he was pretty
He
modest.
was as an
Right.
artist, that you know what? Now that I think about it, every last musician and vocalist that was in the P Funk
Hmm.
organization was exceptional, and you had to be to play with the to stand with the Funk Soldiers on
Yeah,
stage. You had to be on the same level. You did to be on that team. You really did. So yeah, Gary Hudgens is. I'm looking forward to doing working with him again and Jeff Bunn, and I'm still working with Blackbird McKnight. We
yeah.
did our
Great
the last,
song
yeah,
for the funky folks,
the
right?
last show yeah, absolutely. And the last show that the Brides of Funkenstein did was with Blackbird and Mudbone Cooper. Muddy came in and sang with us as a guest, special guest artist. Then I used some of Graham Central Station's
Oh,
musicians
okay.
and Rusty
Hmm.
Allen,
Yeah,
bass player that
replace Larry.
with
Yeah.
Sly. So yeah, it was a whole different feel. You got Terry Scott, who actually played with the Gap Band, and Billy Johnson played with Graham, Larry Graham, and oh gosh, the list goes on with some of the most talented musicians in the business. Where we put that last show together, and it was just scary funky. Okay, it
Yeah,
was
so we got to get out there and do more. People who are watching, listening on whatever outlet you're checking this out, spread the word for
absolutely.
Dawn Silva, the Brides of Funkenstein, and dawnsilva.com. The Funk Queen, available now. I wanted to ask you about a dear friend of ours. I really miss him, Bernie Worrell. Whew. And you were the lead singer with the Woo Warriors for a bit, right? Yeah,
Yeah, a couple
yeah. I
years.
got that
Yeah, a
live
couple
recording
years.
you guys did.
Which one?
It's somewhere. I know it had like a white and a purple. Well, Bernie's color was purple, but it was like it was a live show. I forget which show, but yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my God. I would like
yeah.
to hear that
I
one.
gotta find it.
Yeah,
I got so much stuff in the digital archives. Yeah,
that was such a fun gig with Bernie Worrell and Woo Warriors. Yeah, that was a. We went up and down the Midwest, and we played some of the most eclectic places. Yeah, he had a very unique following. He sure
yeah.
did.
He actually,
So
I think late 90, I might have been 98, 99. He came to the studio, brought all his keyboards, came up from New Jersey, set it up. 2 hour interview. He played a little bit. Chris France and Tina Weymouth came to the studio, surprised him, and man, it was great. Yeah, Bernie, yeah,
wow.
sweetheart of a guy. Yeah.
Well, you think about the musicians, and I don't want to leave out Michael
Oh
Hampton too. He
yeah.
said it and did some. He did some stuff with us too, and it's. I think we were doing that mothership. What was it? The Mothership Connection reunion sort of a
Hmm.
tour that happened a few years back with right before COVID, I believe it was. We had Grady Thomas from original Parliament, and we had Kevin Goins again too singing lead with us, and Michael Hampton, and of course Jeanette Washington Perkins from
Hmm.
Parlette. And me and her go all the way back to gosh, we've been friends. My best friend,
Had
and
a rough start, but now you're the best friends.
well, we had a real
Yeah.
rough start. So I mean, I did talk about it in the book that it's more rougher than most could imagine for
Right.
females. But yeah, you had those. What do I want? How do I want to say this? I guess professional jealousies, and then you had the organization had a tendency to play musicians and singers against each other,
Hmm.
And I believe by the time that the Slides girls, because that's what they called us when we were going into the P Funk organization, they didn't quite accept us fully. We were basically outsiders. But we were Slides girls, so they gave us that respect because we were coming from Slides camp. But we were still not on the team with these guys. They hadn't quite made up their mind if they're going to let us ride on the mothership. So a couple of the girls weren't too happy about it. And I won't add a parlet. I won't say that it was Malia Franklin because Malia was and I were actually really really close friends. We stayed, friends. We were friends before I even met any members of Parliament
Right.
Funkadelic, and way after. So yeah, me and her were really cool from the beginning, and I wrote about that in the book. We could be on here for
Yeah,
the
I know.
next 2 or 3 hours talking
Did you
about all
did
of the
you
associations that I went
yeah, I
to.
wanted to ask you quickly, was there ever a discussion? Do you have a discussion to work with Prince? Did you cross paths like that?
Uh, yeah, briefly, but then we were in George's camp. We were with P Funk, so that was kind of like a almost a violation for anybody to come and start
Yeah.
snatching girls or snatching musicians. Because you better believe there was always someone wanting to
Hmm.
snatch pieces of these thoroughbreds out of that organization. And we got quite a few offers to leave the girls, the musicians, all the
Right.
time. But then, because it was such a family unit and everybody was strong, nobody was going anywhere. Not at that time, because, Parliament Funkadelic at one time was the greatest funk R&B black group in the world. So you're not going to give up that position to go work with anybody else. But it wasn't not saying that people tried to break it up and split us apart. They did. It was a lot of that going on then.
Oh, I gotta
But
give it
no,
up to Junie Morrison because he gave it up for the ladies of P
June
Funk,
Morrison,
but he gave it up for you during the
another
induction
thoroughbred.
speech of the Hall of Fame. He said to the ladies, he
He sure
mentioned you,
did.
your name and Lynn, and
Yeah,
yep,
he sure
and
did.
all you.
Most definitely
Yeah.
did that. Junie surprised me. He started changing. Some of the things I wrote in the book about him too, about where he came from.
So another thing we wanted to talk about the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco. You're involved with some tremendous musician and friends of yours. So fill us in on that great project.
Yeah, there was a guy. He was in London, and I believe he books a lot of groups over there at the Great American Music Hall, and it's a nostalgic venue. So he wanted to know if the Brides of Funkenstein were still performing, and I said absolutely. He said so. He hired us and booked us to perform there in October of 2024. Actually, that was the last show that we did on that level,
Mhm.
and I decided to use some of the local musicians, which happened to be band members that worked with Sly Stone, of course, and which was Rusty Allen from Sly and Jimmy McKinney, keyboard player, who's still out with Sly and the Family Stone now, the tribute band with Jerry Martini and Gregor Rico. And Sly's daughter Fun is also in that group, and then Billy Johnson was the drums, and he played with Frankie Beverly and Mays, and as well as Dave Council on keyboards. He also played with Frankie Beverly and Graham Central Station, and I can't forget Gail Modrow, who came
Yeah,
from
playing the guitar, right?
playing guitar, and Freddie Stone and Sly taught her how to play. So she
Oh,
has the most unorthodox and the funkiest style rhythm guitarist I've ever heard in my life. Exceptional vocalist, and so Gail has been with me for the last 20 years. And then we had Mudbone Cooper, a special
hmm,
guest, and again with Jeanette Washington Perkins from Parlet. Now she's a official member of the Brides of Funkenstein, and then a lady named Valerie Pinkston. And Valerie's out there with Dinah Ross. She tours with her all year round. She just happened
okay.
to be free at that time. Then I had a couple of other singers that have been with me for years, and that's Jackie Simley and my cousin Donna Taylor. And Donna Taylor was singing with Burt Bacharach, and then Jackie Simley was with Shaka, and there's a little bit of everybody. I mean, in the business and all. We put these powerful musicians and singers together, and that happened to be probably one of the best shows I think we've ever done, and I've done personally, and as a group in years, many many years. What was surprising though, Joe, was in San Francisco. I thought it was going to be more of a mixture in terms of the fans, but it was like 98% white,
Oh,
and I
really?
was
You
really
didn't get yeah.
yeah, it was
San
packed to the
Francisco?
San Francisco.
Wow.
So what we did is I didn't realize that because when we played the Great American Music Hall, we have picked up on the Grateful Dead market, Jerry Garcia's Grateful Dead market. and the demographics have changed completely. And these people
Okay.
were so mesmerized, and I think they were dancing so hard. I saw one guy completely pass out, cold, passed out, right in front of the stage, and they just looked at him and kept on dancing. It's like it was quite an experience. I mean, to tell you, so anyone who basically said that the funk market is dead,
Yeah.
that is absolutely not accurate.
You're
It's
talking about
not.
like the dead following. I went years ago. We went to the Gathering of Vibes Festival in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and Original P, Fuzzy, and Grady. They had the Original P band, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it was in the crowd. Some guys walking with like a it looked like I thought it was like a sandwich selling it in the crowd in a tin foil. And I go to my wife, "That's strange. They're selling sandwiches in the crowd." She goes, "Yeah, I don't think they're selling sandwiches. They were just up front, like selling weed to whoever wanted it."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I wrote about it in the book that Lynn and I we used to actually smoke weed with the front row. Right? It was pretty much
Oh,
everybody
during
tried
the
to push.
show.
Yeah, during the
Wow.
show.
Yeah.
I remember people. The word was out that the girls smoke weed with the audience, and so the front row. I remember there used to be a lot of guys all kind of bunched up in together, and they were passing joints. And Lynn and I would sit on the edge of the stage with our microphone singing and smoking weed with the audience.